Hey guys, Brass Facts here. It's time to do the AK video. This time out in Western Oregon, the state that is single-handedly making me reconsider my love for rain because it will not stop raining out here. I don't get it. It's been 5 days of non-stop rain and nothing else. But yeah, let's talk about AKs. If I sound a little bit different, it's because I'm in my candy van, and I actually don't have my microphone right now. It's at Hop's place, and he forgot to bring it up. Okay, so AK stuff, specifically why you, a red-blooded American, want this commie weapon in square brackets current year. It all really boils down to the short answer being because you fucking want to, and the long answer being also because you fucking want to, but I'll take 15 minutes to explain why that makes sense given the context. Welcome to another Brass Facts Doesn't Shut Up philosophy video. As the great Second Amendment warrior Sage Nut and Fancy always says, second kind of cool, in fact, rules supreme and is an instant pass to justify to buy anything you want. And I agree. If an AK is cool, get it. You don't need to justify it to me. Dudes with rifles are dudes with rifles. And if it has to be an AK, buy a damn AK.
PSA AK, ladies and gentlemen. Here.
But longtime viewers of the channel know that I want it because it's cool is not an answer or perspective that I almost ever cover because that's not something I can personally quantify, and it's a very personal thing, and often adds a lot of noise in the context of an objective review. That's why I never mention it. Basically, I give you the facts, none of which are about brass, and then you can add your own personal taste to determine if you will buy or you will pass. So approaching the AK from that perspective, no. Don't buy an AK. For most people in most scenarios in the United States, it has inferior ergonomic designs to basically anything out there. The magazines are a huge pain in the ass while kind of struggling to interface with standard Western gear, changing out handguards, sights, stocks, finding the correct muzzle device, using suppressor, parts wear management. You add in the fact that there's honestly like an encyclopedia's worth of different AKs that all interface with inner gear and furniture slightly different, and on top of that, of course, the famous one, AK weighs a lot. Upwards of 1 to 2 pounds over the standard rifle, and a lot of that weight is centered forward. We used to tolerate this a lot because, well, AK cheap. But now, AK not cheap, and AK asking for boutique prices while offering conscript tier results. Crooked sights, weird head spacing issue, non-concentric threads, and so much more. Properly and well done assembled AKs are coming out at costs more than my first car, which, by the way, that was a Jeep. That wasn't cheap. Which brings us back to the opener. Why AK? Yes, there are benefits. Yes, it's a good rifle, but if you need Magic the Gathering level autism and expenditures to access the platform that ends up being, at best, slightly worse than an AR-15, then the answer has to be and will always be, because I want to. Most AK guys get this, but there's a good chunk of them that keep up the lie that going through all this hassle actually ends up with a vastly superior product. No, it does not. The reality is, we can admit to ourselves that we can have a functional tool, but also have that tool be something that brings us joy. Which is not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Training, preparedness, the lifestyle that entails is quite tedious, and at the end of the day, burnout is always looming. So if it takes AK autism to keep you involved long term, then it'll take AK autism to keep you in long term. Okay, after all that, let's do it. Let's talk about reasons why, despite all of the reasons thus far, and my very strong warning that for most people, AKs ain't it, why you might actually still want to run an AK. What does it do well? These are reasons I've personally come up for my specific environment after running AKs for about 8,000 rounds. My first AK was a Wasser. I ran that for about 5,000 rounds, just shy of 5,000 rounds. And then my second AK, which is the one you see on screen, is at about 3,000 rounds at this time. So I'm not an AK guy per se, but I've run these in a fair number of environments, scenarios, under the clock, and actually once in a competition. So I think I can talk about it at least somewhat. Real quick, AKs aren't cheap, so let's get into the sponsor of the channel, our boys over at Venture Surplus. What are we talking about today? Cold weather gear, and you need to combat that. So many people do not like cold weather environments because they don't actually know how to properly approach cold weather, mostly because they just, stay at home because it's nice, warm, and comfy. But dealing with cold weather is actually quite simple, and maybe I should do a video on it someday. But honestly, the TLDR, the cheat code to handling cold weather, is understanding, layering,
and the understanding that the core of layering is probably just wearing a very good pair of thermal underlayers, that is, tight form-fitting clothes. It keeps in a lot of your heat, and it allows you to shed outer layers very quickly without dumping too much heat retention. So instead of wearing a nice, fancy, expensive Deadbird jacket, just go ahead and head over to Venture Surplus and maybe consider you just need a pair of thermals. For example, this Grid Fleece, well, thermal bundle. It's, the waffle topper variety, so it's got that grid pattern on the inside. And this is a great starting point to wear under all of your gear. Say you put this on, you put on, some combat pants or waterproof pants, you put on a sweater and you put on a jacket, and then when you start getting moving, ditch the sweater, wear the jacket and keep going, and you can even ditch the jacket if you want to vent heat. And this thing will keep you warm throughout. Head over to Venture Surplus to really round out your cold weather gear and actually tackle this cold weather season properly by getting out there and training in environments that suck a little more ass than normal.
Let's start with Ballistics, for example, specifically 7.62x39, the AK OG round. Everyone loves short barrel suppressed setups, but with 5.45 and 5.56, people are becoming increasingly aware of the limitations when we lop off 50% of our barrel length. And with 300 Blackout becoming increasingly more affordable, many are realizing once again the upsides of shoving big bullet into short barrel setups, which is what the AK you see on screen is. It's AK-104. Now, there are some issues with the By39 take on the concept, mostly related to the difficulty of running subsonic ammo, way more unburnt powder, and of course that horrific magazine taper, resulting in kind of awful magazine design. But in the realm of a setup that is going to be running supersonic exclusively, most of these issues end up being kind of moot. Dealing with this, to get this round, we end up with a rifle that actually excels in a multi-role capability. For example, against the two-legged variety, but also the four-legged variety, especially like heavy pelt type animals, boars, bears, you name it. Thicker pelts do a number on 5.56 and 5.45, green tip or otherwise, and it's why, at least anecdotally, a lot of people hunt boars with 300 Blackout with full-length barrels. Similarly, especially out of short barrel usage, once again, 5.56 and 5.45 tend to run into issues when they hit, well, honestly, they hit anything, but specifically intermediate barriers. Trees, car doors, car windows, signs, wigs, twigs, angry thoughts, you name it, all of them do a number on fast light bullets. And while personal tests have shown me, at least, that generally most rounds are going to have issues when they hit a thing in terms of deflection, heavier, higher momentum rounds do excel here compared to 5.56, 5.45. When we move on to the platform itself, despite all of the hassle, AKs are actually, for example, excellent cold weather rifles, which, probably not a coincidence given the country of origin, but AKs handle frozen mud, snow, frozen snow mud, and of course the ham sandwich without much issue at all. To be sure, it's not that ARs and other rifles don't handle the cold, but we need way more attention to survive multiple days in a cold weather environment.
What the fuck?
Anecdotally, the biggest mode of cold weather failure that I've personally observed in my environment is that the gun, gets covered in snow, which it can handle, but then you shoot the gun, all the snow melts, and it washes off all the lube off of the gun, inserts dirt in between the, receiver, and now you're an unhappy chappy. Because ARs like to be wet, ARs like to be clean, and the first is a terrible idea, generally speaking, in a cold weather environment, and the second is not really going to be consistently happening if you're waterboarding your gun with snow. The same exact issue happens to the AK. It's not immune to it, but mostly due to being heinously overgassed most of the time, huge tolerance between parts, and an overall ability to function, honestly, completely dry, unlubed, makes the AK a far nicer choice if you're in the shit. Snow-covered shit, that is.
Business? How's my face looking?
Cancerous.
And while my biggest gripes of the AK platform is that it has that obnoxious levered safety and that magazine latch mechanism, so I can't do my cool guy reloads, although, these reloads look kind of cool. When you are in a cold weather environment, you're not doing cool guy fast shit. You're wearing gloves and you're freezing to death. So the loss of dexterity, due to, your bricked up hands covered in big old gloves, actually makes that large obnoxious safety actually very easy to access. And latching magazines, well, once again, obnoxious, are actually kind of nice when you have like this very brick of a hand. I think our boy, Valgear, has a number of anecdotes of many Western rifles. I think he mentions the Bren 2 being very susceptible over time to kind of cold, frozen, muddy environments. While the AK, and interestingly enough, a Mark 16 of all things, was a much better fit for that type of environment and was able to power through a lot of the issues of, well, stuff I just mentioned.
Beating and definitely can go without cleaning. But it's not on par with AK-74, unfortunately. It is what it is.
Hey, editing brass facts here. So a lot of my experience with AKs were, the first time around that I've owned an AK, and I shot that one a lot in snowy weather environments, and a lot of my guns back then, AR-15s especially, had a lot of issues in the snow because there's a lot of snow, and more importantly, a lot of like rain, snow, or slushy, or whatever. Unfortunately, or weirdly, or whatever you want to call it, this time around I had the exact opposite experience. So I ran both an AR-15 and the AK you see in the footage, and we used a couple in rainy and then snowy environments over the course of a couple consecutive days. While I did do some things to try to maintain these guns, I was limited in what I was capable of doing, and some degree of moisture persisted.
I have no more ammo. Yeah, it's completely bricked up from... Oh, no, there it goes. Oh, this poor gun. Oh, and the safety is... Ugh.
As weird as it is, the AR-15 handled it not particularly well. The gun was struggling to chamber around, on a full magazine, but other than that, it was doing okay. And that was with sort of reset days where it did go back into a dry car, at least. In a consecutive day environment, this would have been much more exemplified. The AK was cycling very well, right up until just randomly at some point there was sufficient surface rust on the trigger that the whole thing gummed up and basically died, killing the AK essentially hard. So I think this is more of a fluke than anything. Maybe you can blame it on PSA, you can blame it on, me not cleaning the gun 4 minutes after it rained. I don't know, but the point is the gun went down hard. But I still don't think that disqualifies the point I made about AKs tending to handle rain, water, and snow significantly better than AR-15s. Well, this just invalidated the whole video. A question that keeps coming up is, yeah, you might like the AK, but why not just run 7.62x3.9 in an AR-15? My counter to that is usually, why not just run that AR-15 in 5.56? But if you really want to run 7.62x3.9 in a modernized rifle, say like the Galil Ace, the new one, or the Mark 47, the CMMG one that you see throughout the video, my response is typically, well, the big reason why I'm running 7.62x3.9 is because I want access to the AK. If I'm going to run a modern platform, I feel like 300 Blackout tends to do 7.62x3.9 better. 5.45x3.9 is done better by 5.56 platforms. But if you are locked in, maybe you already have the magazines, maybe you already have a ton of ammunition left over from the glory days of 7.62x3.9, well then, yeah. The Mark 47 actually specifically seems really nice, having messed with it a couple times now. Now, it's not a full endorsement, I don't own one and I haven't run one long term, but it seems to bring a lot of modern amenities while keeping that AK magazine and that AK type round. Maybe. I don't know. It also looks kind of cool.
What are you doing? That's not going well.
And that's mostly it, at least for me. Remember, at the end of the day, once configured, in addition to these benefits, the rifle is still a rifle, and it does all the things that we expect out of a rifle to do. It is, after all, the second most supported rifle of all time in the United States. And comparing it to an AR-15, while a very legitimate criticism and standard to compare it to, is, after all, still a very high and tough standard to beat. Personally, for me, I'm traveling around the country right now with a van, and while I don't quite trust this PSA AK, I kind of want this exact same setup with better guts. The gun will be folded up, shoved in the corner, neglected and ignored, likely going through hot and cold cycles on repeat, sitting right next to the fire extinguisher next to it. Where I go, brush to feet is actually quite useful, as is the ability not just to use the rifle against two-legged creatures, but the four-legged variety as well. Also, rather uniquely, the ability to shoot straight through my vans and the 50 layers of insulation packed in is also somewhat a relevant scenario, as I potentially would find myself, with assailants on the other side of the van while I'm on the inside for, whatever cracked in I'm parked in. Alright, that was my AK spiel. I know the comment section is going to be either AK sucks and it's milsurp masquerading as a rifle, or the AK is good, shut up AR dude. And of course, neither of which commenters have watched the video, so get on down there, eat your heart out, and watch this Nova clip to serenade you.
Is this door wide open on you? Okay.
Remember me, the person who you said hi to just a second ago and then forgot about immediately? Yeah, so...
Do you have to pee or anything?
I can just go to the restaurant. You guys do a reservation or anything? I know
No.
It's kind of a busy place sometimes.
Kazuki, you might need a reservation for. You might want to call and check and see if they have a table.